Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from 670 The Scores, Mully and Haugh Show. Dan Wiederer is from the Chicago Tribune. He's at Halas Hall, and this is the last Friday before the Bears play the Packers on Sunday in the regular season finale at Lambeau Field. The Bears beat the Packers. The Packers are out of the playoffs in all likelihood. If the Packers win the game, they go into the postseason. The stakes are high, Dan. What have been the emotions like at Halas Hall this week?
Yeah, David, and I think the stakes are high for the Chicago Bears as well, because I think this could be influential in some of the decisions that they're going to deliberate and talk through in the early parts of next week. I think there's an excitement inside the locker room right now. I think this team feels really good about the way it is played. I think they have a sense that there is a core nucleus coming together and that this late season surge is meaningful in ways that we've talked about that you can add a lot of meaning to. 6-2 in your last 8 sounds a lot better than 5-3. Finishing things with a upset of the rival Packers sounds a lot better than losing to the rival Packers. Keeping the Packers out of the playoff sounds a lot better than allowing them to punch their ticket into the postseason and leaving you to watch Wild Card Weekend with great jealousy and envy.
We'll get to the predictions later in the podcast, which you can find on your free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. I think that a good portion of this conversation, Dan, today will revolve around Kevin Warren and the role that he will play moving forward. Kevin Warren is at the forefront of this offseason that is of significant consequence, will have significant consequences on the future for the Bears. And I know that he's in the news because they put him there front and center on ChicagoBears.com. They spent a day, New Year's Eve, the last Sunday of the Falcons game, 18-hour day with Kevin Warren. And so they chronicled that. Just wanted to get your impressions of that and how significant you think, to begin with, Kevin Warren will be in every decision that is made for the Bears moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer to the second part of that question is very. Kevin is going to be in this with a critical eye. Kevin is going to be in this with thought processes and philosophies that he is going to join up with Ryan Poles on to try to get this team on a path that they believe will allow them an opportunity to sustain success. That's the goal. I think there's been a lot of conversation, David, recently about where is this team at right now and what does it mean for next season? And I think those two men, when they sit down and they let the dust settle after Sunday's game and they review it on Monday, and then they get into the big picture deliberations on where they want to take this franchise with what is going to be a series of impactful decisions, it's all going to be centered around what is the path that we think is best for this organization to set us up for a long track record of success, not just to be relevant in 2024. They have to make those decisions with the quarterback. They have to make those decisions with the coaching staff. They have to make those decisions to some extent on the outside of the football world, on the stadium. Kevin is going to have his fingerprints all over everything that is done here, but it's not going to be in an overbearing way. And I think it's a time in Bears history that people should be thankful for, because it is something that they asked for close to 2 decades, really, that there would be oversight and I guess influence of this magnitude on decisions that are pivotal for a long period of time.
One of the biggest ones will revolve around the head coach and Matt Eberflus. And before I get into what I think about Warren and his role and the story devoted to his 18-hour day, let's start with some context. And that was provided on Friday when Kevin Warren and his wife Greta appeared at Lurie Children's Hospital. It's an unbelievable gesture. $1 million they donated, and we'll get into some of the reasons why later. But obviously, when you're in downtown Chicago and you're the president of the Bears on the last Friday of the regular season with so much in limbo, he was asked about what he thinks about the future will hold for Matt Eberflus and what he thinks about the job that Eberflus has done in his second year.
As we said all along, we just continually will stay focused on finishing the season strong, take a big picture, a methodical look at everything. And so I'm looking forward to heading to Green Bay tomorrow, and hopefully the team can keep playing well.
Are they in a place that you like right now?
Well, I mean, I'm very pleased with the energy of our team. I mean, and it's not only in game day, it's around the practice facility, around Halas Hall. I mean, just the energy. I mean, you all see it in the locker room. Guys are playing hard, they're competing, and so we'll continually just build forward, as a franchise. But I'm just really energized, kind of as a franchise where we are with what we have going on with the stadium, what we have going on internally, just building our brand, and what we have going on, with our football team.
What'd you think of that, Dan?
Yeah, I look like the word that came up in one that was brought up to me in the first 5 conversations I had about Kevin Warren a year ago in January of 2023, when we were basically introducing him as the new president of the Bears, is methodical. And that's something that Kevin prides himself on being, as a detail-oriented, methodical person who takes the biggest decisions that are on his plate and gives them great thought and deliberation with the people that he trusts around him. That's what's going to happen here in the coming weeks. I've said for a while now that I am as interested in the explanations of the decisions they make as I am in the actual decisions, because I want to know how they got to those decisions. And I think we have sat here, David, in various forums over the last decade plus and laughed at the explanations that the decision makers at Halas Hall have given us for why they have made decisions. I don't think we're going to be laughing. I think we're going to be trying to understand and maybe disagreeing with some of them and saying, I don't know if this is going to work. But I don't think we're going to have those feelings that we've had after some of those epic George and Ted postseason press conference where you go, man, like I don't know what they're doing up there. And so that is one of my first takeaways. My second one would be that vibes matter to Kevin. I don't think they're everything, but I think you hear in that soundbite there that the energy that he feels in the building is something that has resonated with him. And that will be part of the discussions that they have early next week.
So I wonder, when I hear what he said, and I agree with what you just stated, but I do wonder, and maybe this is just a trained ear, a conditioned response, but if he believes in Matt Eberflus, why would he not just say he believes in Matt Eberflus? I remove the doubt. And I
Because
thought
think
that
there is still some doubt.
Okay, so I think that's what he said. So when he's asked about his confidence and how safe Matt Eberflus is going into the final game, his answer, which was not an emphatic endorsement, not an endorsement at all. I mean, he likes a lot of things. He likes the vibes. But I think that it suggested that there's still a final decision to be reached, which to me, given the way we've been talking about this, and given the way other people in the media nationally and locally have been talking about this, would come as a bit of a surprise. If the Bears fire Matt Eberflus on Monday, we don't know what's going to happen at Lambeau Field, but as we sit here 2 days before kickoff, it surprised me that he wasn't more definitive, and it surprised me that he, as a savvy communicator, left the door open. And it surprised me the most, Dan, that they chose this opportunity to be in front of the cameras and microphones at this juncture of the season, knowing that this was going to come up, that this would definitely be an issue. And I just don't know about the timing. I find it kind of curious.
I was not there at Lurie's. I did speak to Mark Grody from WSCR, who was there. My colleague Colleen Kane was also there. It was supposed to be a non-football questions press conference only to talk about Lurie's. Now, look, there's going to be a football question come up. Credit our friend Patrick Finley for asking that question and getting that response. I'm not pushing back on any of that. You can call timeout. You want your 20-second timeout? I'll give you your 20-second timeout.
Look, I love Pat Finley too. I respect everybody on that beat. You don't have to be a sleuth to this is what I'm talking about. We have complimented Kevin Warren for his savvy, for his understanding and grasp. You have to be incredibly naive to think that you're the Bears president on Friday of Bears Packers week in a season where there's so many futures uncertain, and think you're not going to take football questions.
Well said. No question about it. And so they were taken, and those were the 2 answers you got. I bring that up specifically just to tell you why the conversation didn't continue. It was cut off after those 2 questions, and then a Bears PR spokesman, cut it off, and that's where they ended it. So that's what it was. What we have going forward here, and to your points here, is that there is a sliver of doubt here. There is conversation that the powers that be at Halas Hall want to have. I wouldn't be surprised, David, if this was a decision that takes days for them to reach a final verdict on. I think our audience is going to be at the edge of their seat on Sunday night and Monday morning and possibly into Monday night and possibly all day Tuesday, waiting for an answer. It's like when the new Pope is being announced and you have to wait for the smoke to come, right? Like, these decisions may take time. And I think that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing for this organization that it's not just going to be, because this is, like, you would agree with this wholeheartedly, that these next series of decisions will impact the direction of this franchise for the rest of the 2020s and into the early 2030s. And so you have to make sure that you have thought about every possibility, that you've thought about every option. You hear general managers in this league all the time talk about, we liked player A, but we saw an opportunity to upgrade with player B. The Bears have to do that with the coaching staff as well. They have to get their feeling around how they feel about the current guy, what the alternative options are. And I don't think Kevin or Ryan are fearful of potentially having to make difficult decisions. I know you have used the Cubs analogy often here in recent weeks to say that the Cubs had a manager that they were content with, and then they let him go because they saw a path to a brighter future with a different person. The Bears have to explore that. They're going to have to do it with the quarterback position as well. It's a whole different conversation. But as it relates to the coach, I think that these discussions are long. I think they're difficult. I think they're emotional. I think you have to sort through all of that. And I think that process may not get started until late Monday. And I would expect it to potentially continue over a couple of days next week.
Okay, let's stay with the head coach here for a moment. We'll get to the quarterback in time. I think that that's well said, but the Bears, to me, sound like an organization through Kevin Warren's latest comments and what Ryan Poles has said mid-season. They want to find reasons to keep Matt Eberflus. But I think that when they stop just short of a full-throated endorsement that he is coming back, I think they want to find reasons to keep him, but they also realize that they might have to fire him. And they might have to fire him if, for instance, they blow a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter against the Packers at Lambeau Field. I mean, under those scenarios, you could paint a different picture, but they're realists, and I guess that does protect them when they measure their words as carefully as they were today by Kevin Warren. Because if there's a fourth straight double-digit lead blown in the fourth quarter, I don't see how you can bring him back. And I'm anticipating that reaction because I don't want to be definitive in like saying he's coming back no matter what. I think that you can't say that, and I think the words from Warren kind of confirm that.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, so on Thursday morning at ChicagoTribune.com, I did a deep dive on the quarterback situation. On Friday morning on ChicagoTribune.com, I did a deep dive on what's ahead for Kevin and Ryan and making these coaching decisions. And I had a source tell me early in the week that this feels like, quote unquote, a moment for the Bears. And I have gotten no indication that it is anything but a moment for the Bears when they go up to Green Bay on Sunday. I think this is a absolutely meaningful game in a lot of different contexts to measure how this team is finishing, to measure how both the coach and the quarterback fare in a situation with as much pressure and as much big games, feeling and stage that there is for this. I think this is a moment for this franchise, and it's okay to embrace that moment and understands the stakes that come with that. If you go out and you beat the Packers by 30 points, the discussion changes. If you do, as you just alluded to, blow a double-digit lead and fall through the trap door again, that changes the discussion a little bit. And so that moment still has to play out before this discussion gets to the end point, and then you are able to start all these other conversations. It is detailed here. You can prop up the late season surge that the Bears have had. You can do as Kevin Warren did in that clip previously and say, I like the energy in the building. But you also have to zoom out at some point and say, who have we beaten? Where are our signature wins? You got one so far. That's against the Lions a few weeks ago. There aren't others here. You have zero more opportunities to add any playoff teams to your victory list. And you've got 2 wins in 2 seasons against teams that made the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. So like all of this is context. All of this is stuff that has to be sorted through. It's all going to be presented, and laid out on the table. And I think there will become a point early next week after exit interviews with the players where Matt is allowed to sit in with those men and basically have a voice in his performance review, and that's going to influence some of the decision-making as well.
Let me add something to the mix, and I don't know how relevant this is or isn't, because we've talked about it before. It seems to be an issue in every coaching search, and seems like Bears off every other offseason. But if they do have these deep deliberations and they take their time and they, start Monday night and they pour the coffee, they stay up late and they get up early, and it's midweek, late week before they determine, and let's say hypothetically that they wait, and after all that deliberation, the jury comes back and says, you know what, Matt Eberflus is guilty of coaching malpractice, you're fired. Okay. When you wait, as long as the Bears might wait to fire him or to look for a new coach, how much is there a risk of not being able to get in front of the process and finding the next one or his replacement? Do you run the risk of not being one of the teams that, if you're going to have an opening, appeals to the most attractive candidates? And if you're going to upgrade, in theory, don't you want to be an aggressive, progressive organization and kind of get in front of the decision, but or at least the pursuit, and make your best case to whatever candidate that might be?
It depends on who you're interested in. There are new rules in place this year where coaches that have teams in the playoffs can't do in-person interviews for head coaching jobs until after the divisional round. So you're going to have to wait a couple weeks anyway if you're pursuing somebody that is currently involved with a playoff team. If you got a guy, let's say Brian Callahan, who's a name that's come up a bunch and people I've talked to with the Bengals, he's going to be done on Sunday afternoon. And so if you want to have a quick in-person interview with him and get that going right away, you're going to have the luxury of doing that next week if you'd like to. Look, like all around the league, we're going to be monitoring firings, right? We know what Black Monday is in this league. We know what it does. I think there is an over-exaggeration every single year on the rush to fire and the rush to hire. You can go through the dates that every organization has made their hirings and firings over the last 15 years, and there's no correlation to getting it right by how early you start or how late you finish. And so, like, I think, for us and the public more specifically, you get caught up in the frenzied moment of we want to know now, we want to know now, we want to know now. And you don't have to know now. Like the whole goal is that you don't have to do this again if you decide to do it in the first place. So I think there's great value in taking your time. Now, look, I'm not advocating pushing this off to the end of January, but you've got a few days here where Kevin and Ryan can sort through every damn thing that they want to sort through before they make a decision that, again, is going to impact the franchise for a long time to come. For me, I think the most complicating factor is you have to have, as we've talked about previously, this marriage between your coaching decision and your quarterback decision that gets really, really, really intricately complex here right away. Because like there are so many different avenues you can go down, but you have to go down whatever avenue you choose. It has to be with a clear-cut vision on how to unite a coach and a quarterback. It can be the two guys that are currently employed here. It can be two new guys. It can be a mix and match in either way, but you better know what you want to do in that regard before you make any one of those decisions, because otherwise you put yourself into a pretzel that you're not going to be able to get out of.
Okay, let's pivot to the quarterback for a moment, then, because I think the head coach, that's a good point. And I only say that because of you worry about everything, but you think about coaches who get taken, who might be offensive coordinators, or the staff start to put together. The longer you wait, the more you fear you're going to miss out on somebody. But that you made some good points there. As it pertains to Justin Fields, this is what I wanted to ask you, and I posed it on the Mully and Haugh show on Friday morning, and it was my reaction to the Kevin Warren piece in Chicago Tribune. I'm sorry.
Nope, don't do it. Don't say it. ChicagoBears.com.
ChicagoBears.com. Kevin Warren's 18-hour day on New Year's Eve, and they did what professional websites do. They chronicle the day in the life. It wasn't journalism to me. I mean, I think that it was a big difference between what you did in the News Judgment, you and Brian Casella and the Chicago Tribune and the brand and all that represents. ChicagoBears.com exists to promote the Chicago Bears brand and put it in the best possible light. And so that is a distinction between journalism and PR, and this is definitely PR. So I ask you this. It was, again, everything is about timing. It was dropped on the Friday of the final week of the regular season. Thursday night, excuse me. We talked about it Friday morning. It was the final week of the regular season with all of these questions looming, and a quarterback in Justin Fields that has strong popular support from the fan base, maybe even loud. It's the loudest public support that I can remember for a professional athlete in town, maybe since Derrick Rose. Talking about a lot of the Cubs, they kind of split the vote. Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, they had all their constituencies. But like, I can't remember an athlete in town, Dan, that was this popular from this loud of a fan base since maybe Derrick Rose. Anyway, this is what I'm getting at.
I know where you're going.
Does a president who it works for an organization and represents an organization as a front man who cares as much about popularity as this piece suggests he does, could he be swayed, or will it be part of the decision in bringing back Justin Fields because he's so popular with the fan base? I don't know the answer to that, but that was one of the questions I was left with after reading that piece on ChicagoBears.com.
I feel uniquely qualified to answer this question, and I will do so as straightforwardly as I can. My answer to that would be no, that it wouldn't be amplified fan sentiment that would change the course of direction for someone who prides himself on his leadership skills. Now, you are 100% dead on in noting that Kevin Warren is extremely image conscious. That's something that comes up from people that like him and people that don't like him. Like they say Kevin is very image conscious, and I would think that he'd be self-aware enough to admit that if you had him on the air and asked him that question. So there is that element to it. But the other part of Kevin Warren's DNA is to create grand goals, dream those with the most fantastic vision you can, and then try to figure out what's realistic and try to pursue that. And so I think he is going to be driven in this next series of decisions to try to find a pathway that not just earns him, a January round of applause from people who want their current quarterback to stick around, but he ultimately wants the round of applause when the confetti's coming down and Roger Goodell's standing next to him with a shiny trophy. Like, that is what motivates him. It's what motivates Ryan Poles. I can tell you both guys are intensely proud of being part of Super Bowl winners in their previous stops. Kevin's is back with the Rams in the early, almost 20 plus years ago, obviously more recently Ryan with the Chiefs, and both of them will tell you that they were with those organizations during lean times where the difficulty of the climb was obvious. And so they have great pride in kind of knowing that this isn't going to always be easy, and you don't just knee-jerk react and make decisions based on what will get you a short-term, like I say, a round of applause or this approval. That the goal here is to be revered for a half century because you did something that no one in the last 40 years has done, which is taking the Bears to the playoffs, in 5 consecutive years, which is eventually playing in a Super Bowl, which is eventually trying to win that Super Bowl. So I think the driving force of this, David, will be what is going to get us the grandest potential achievement, and then that other stuff may be a factor. I'm not going to minimize it or throw it out the window, but I don't think Kevin is that. I don't know what the word is. I guess I'd say flaky to just be like, oh, the fans love Justin, so that's what we're going to rubber stamp at this.
Maybe I asked it the wrong way, and I think that's a good answer. I acknowledge that this may be a total overreaction, but I'm just being honest. This was my reaction. I'm wondering.
It's a good conversation
about the role popularity will play or emotion will play in the decision. If not, it'll persuade him to keep and bring back Justin Fields because he's got 7 out of every 10 Bears fans wanting him to return and calling any opinion that opposed that a criminal opinion, as I was accused of having this morning.
I got a lot to talk about on that topic.
Okay. But maybe not bringing him back, but do you think it would dissuade the Bears from going in an unpopular direction? And maybe Caleb Williams at the end of this process is vetted, but still kind of unpopular. Do you think that would factor into the thinking or the thought process of an organization that is drafting number 1 overall and getting somebody who's essentially the CEO of the company when they do?
No, popularity, it doesn't have anything to do with this at all. And I'll say that straightforwardly. And I just I won't even waver on it. And, look, like, I don't know who the wizards are that proclaim that there's, 75% of Bears fandom is in favor of bringing back the current quarterback. That seems to be a social media generated concoction of people sitting in an echo chamber, creating their own polls and then putting them out there and thinking that they're scientific. Like that, that's not what this is right now. And until someone shows me evidence from a official polling place, I think you, David, I think you suggested that in the glory days of the Chicago Tribune, when you were working there and there was resources and manpower, that you would have found a way as the editor to assign a company, right, to do a poll to figure this out, right?
We used to have one at our Scarborough used to do some researcher polls for us. I think we used to do that every so often, every couple of years. We would have the most popular teams in town. It was a great excuse to write a column.
The Caleb Williams conversation will not come down to popularity. It will come down to a homework assignment that this organization has with a handful of people involved in this over the next 10 to 12 weeks of learning what makes this guy tick, of learning, as I think we've talked about on this podcast before, how he handles pressure, how he handles criticism, how he handles failure, how he handles struggle, how he handles the spotlight. What are his goals? I had a former AFC offensive coordinator last week say, the one question I want him to answer directly for me right away is, are you in this for championships or are you in this for stardom? There's a big difference, right? And so, like, when you're doing that personality testing, obviously the direct question to Caleb is going to be answered championships. Well, now talk to everybody around him, talk to his coaches, his teammates at every stop, Oklahoma, USC, Gonzaga Preparatory High School in Washington, D.C. Like, go do your homework and get a personality profile from people who know him best that tell you how you think he will handle what is a massive responsibility. In the piece I did on the quarterbacks this week at chicagotribune.com, I had someone say directly to me, he's not just walking into Chicago. He's walking into Chicago potentially to replace a very well-liked quarterback in Justin Fields. And so there is some thick skin that's required for that. There is some emotional stability that's required for that. The Bears have to vet that out. They have to do their homework. And I think our audience should be prepared for this quarterback situation to drag out for a long, long time and to be the center of, social media conversation and national debate conversation. And every single day you're going to have a new talking head weighing in with some sentiment on this. But the Bears part in this is to go do their homework and figure out whether he's there. The consensus right now within the league, David, is that in this quarterback class, which is a really good quarterback class, it's going to have a lot of guys, that Caleb Williams is the one guy who has the chance to be transcendent, right? Like, you can still go find another quarterback in this draft that's going to be a good player and take his team to the playoffs, 4 or 5 times. But
you've got one of those.
The upside of Caleb Williams is that this guy takes you to a different mountaintop that you haven't visited in a long, long time. And so that's how you want to explore your scouting process with him.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I wonder if that will still be the feeling after he talks to everybody and every team's vet him. There's no way to know that. Yeah.
Right. No, it's an intense homework assignment. It really is. And it's why careers are on the line. It's why that position is as studied as it is, because it is complicated. And so, but again, like I think we get caught up sometimes because we have to live in a world where, and especially you, my God, you criminal, where fans on a daily basis are ready to shout at you and ready to tell you what's absolute fact, even though it's just absolute opinion, and so you get caught up in thinking that this is like this nonstop tsunami of chatter that the decision makers are completely in tune to and completely influenced by. And I just think they're going to have their head down and their blinders on and put together a path that helps them make the most educated decision.
I want to ask you 2 things before we move on. We talked about how my impression was when Kevin Warren was asked about Matt Eberflus, he didn't say he's coming back. He didn't give him a rousing endorsement when he could have, just removed any doubt, because they're not there yet. Similarly, I want to know what you think about two things that I picked up on, or not picked up on, but just my observations during the week of preparation here. Justin Fields has sounded like a quarterback that sees the writing on the wall or understands what's coming. Whether it was an interview with Caitlin Sharkey and WGN, or maybe at the podium sometimes and talking about things, it looks like maybe he is braced for what's next. So I wonder what you think of that. And then added to that, Matt Eberflus was asked again this week in preparation for the Packers about, is Justin Fields your franchise quarterback moving forward? Can you see that? And again, just like Luke Getsy, they have resisted the urge, if they have it, or they've resisted the opportunity when given to say, he's our guy. We can win a Super Bowl with him because of him, and we believe in him. And to me, that was telling. And I just don't know how you read both Fields' comments and demeanor, and also the reluctance or resistance of the coaching staff to embrace him as a franchise quarterback.
I'm going to start with my answer to the Fields part of the question, then I'm going to flip the question back on you. But I think Justin is wired uniquely, and I think I've been on record multiple times as saying just how much I admire his ability to stay present, to be introspective, and to have opportunity to reflect, but not ever allow his brain to fast forward more steps ahead than it needs to. Like, I would have loved that skill at 24 years old. I really would have. It would have made some of my stress levels diminish. And so, like, I give him a lot of credit for the strength that he shows and the perspective he has in those moments. I think he knows this could go either way. I think he knows he could be here when organized team activities start in May. And I think he knows that this is a business, and that there may be some questions about all of his skills and as a high level NFL quarterback, and then he might get traded and have to start over somewhere else. And so he's come to terms with that, and he's not worrying about it on a daily basis like the rest of us are. Kudos to Justin Fields. Incredible strength to have that within your personality. I'll flip this around on you in regards to Matt's response to this. I put forth a lot of thoughts from people around the league, coaches, former execs, current GMs, et cetera, on who Justin Fields is as a quarterback. When you read that and you kind of got your brain wrapped around the league-wide sentiment on who this quarterback is currently, what did you take away? What did you hear from people elsewhere that aren't in this market about what they see in this quarterback? Because I think it'll tell you something similar to what the current coaches say.
I heard and read into it. My takeaway was that he's just good enough to get you beat or get you fired. I mean, he's just good enough to keep things close. He does a lot of things well, but he's not going to be the guy that you consistently can count on to make the key throw when he needs to make the key throw. And the word that will come up, if this is the end of his 3-year tenure, I mean, he was held back or he didn't reach his potential because he was too inconsistent. And that's as a thrower. The things that stand out are the explosive, the escapability, the Houdini acts. But I don't think that you can make a living that way. It's like it's too unstable. And I think and football coaches, evaluators, they want stability, predictability, dependability. And I think what I read was that people have a ton of respect for Justin Fields' athleticism, his demeanor,
Yes.
his makeup. Nobody has ever, I think, really questioned that. He's overcome a lot with his health, but I just don't think that he has proven himself over his entire body of work that he can be a consistent thrower that you trust to get you to the top level and to win it all. So I don't think he passes the confetti test because of that.
So you just said out loud what Matt Eberflus was trying to probably say, right? And that's why I asked you, because
right.
I think that's the interpretation of those sentiments, is that there's a lot to like, and then there's a lot that gives you pause and says, my God, like, this league is about being able to consistently perform at a high level from inside the pocket. And as much as anything else, it's all about being able to consistently perform at a high level in the fourth quarter. And some of those fourth quarter numbers are abysmal, and no one in the league just nonchalantly discards those and goes, oh, well, yeah, but so what? Like that's seen as I think in my piece, somebody said it was a bright red flag. And then another person told me that that's the crystal ball into seeing how a quarterback is going to perform in the playoffs, because ultimately you're going to be put inside the pocket and in close games against really good opponents. And so when you have this track record over 3 seasons of this is how you operated no matter what's around you, that becomes part of your resume. And so people look at that resume and they go, man, a lot to love here, but and it's that feeling that Ryan and Kevin and anyone else that wants to unite with them on this next leg of the journey are going to have to sort through to try to get themselves to a quarterback decision that makes sense.
And it will be awkward as we wait for that decision to come from the Bears. I don't anticipate it coming quickly. I don't anticipate it getting any quieter in Chicago. I don't think that as you look at, you spin ahead next week, next month, the NFL Combine. I don't know, Dan. If you're going to trade Justin Fields, I don't know when the ideal time would be to trade him. And it's not like baseball, or you're not going to act immediately. You're not cutting them. So you're going to be waiting. And there's going to be a limbo period that will be awkward for everybody and really kind of tricky to talk through.
Honestly, the only imposing deadline is the draft.
Right.
I mean, it really is, because teams are going to start to want to get clarity on what they're doing at the position at that point. May 2nd, I think it's May 2nd or 3rd is when the 5th-year option deadline arises, which also affects trade value for a player, because the team that gets him is going to want to have the say on whether they want him on a 1-year trial or they want to do a 2-year trial with the 5th-year option exercised. So there's a lot of those things that will factor in, but this could take months for them to get resolution on, and they don't have to play their hand early. What happens if Caleb Williams tears his ACL training in mid-March and changes everything? So there is no harm in kind of like having a decision and having a gut feeling and listening to offers and figuring out what's out there. But there is no harm in taking your time with this until you get to the month of April and probably late April.
Plus, you're going to have maximum value on draft day. The only other thing I would say is maybe before free agency, teams might be motivated to give up something so they answer that question. But if you wait until the draft, there's going to be that sense of urgency. Maybe you lose some leverage. I don't know. I think you could debate both sides of that.
One thing working against them is that is a stacked quarterback class this year. And so there are probably teams that might say, hey, like, we'd really like to get into the top 10 and grab ourselves Jaden Daniels. If not, then let's call Chicago about Justin. You know? And so that there's going to be some of that plays out as well.
So we alluded to this before we get to our predictions on Friday morning on the Mully and Haugh show. As you can imagine, there's strong opinions on both sides. I don't need to tell you, Dan. We have heard from a lot of really passionate Bears fans who support Justin Fields, some who believe in moving on is the right thing. It's been a spirited discussion, and it will continue to be. But this was the tone of the rhetoric on Friday morning of Bears-Packers week, when we had a call and that questioned Mully and I and why we were not in handcuffs.
The way you guys talk about Justin Fields is criminal. It makes me sick to my stomach.
Okay. He said criminal, made it sick to his stomach. We had a little bit more dialogue with him, but it wasn't necessarily that productive.
I thought it was very rude of Brad Biggs to express those sentiments to you after all that the Mully and Haugh show has done for him.
Yeah, right. That was not Brad Biggs. Did it sound a little like Biggsy? It kind of did. But you know what? That's what maybe I'm naive, but it has surprised me how strong the support has been for a quarterback who has been as inconsistent as Justin Fields has been. The highs have been so high and so much fun, but he's never quite bottomed out, but he hasn't really been. The fourth quarter especially, the numbers speak for themselves, and in spite of that, there's guys who feel like every evaluation is a criticism and you're attacking by being objective. I really don't think I'll ever quite get used to that.
I said to somebody in the media room on Friday afternoon that I wish under every single article I wrote and every single social media post I put forth, I could just have a stamp at the bottom that said, I do not have a desired outcome. I am just providing you information and analysis. I do not have a desired outcome. If Justin is here, fantastic. If they pivot in a new direction, fantastic. I'm still going to have the same job and the same role and the same critical lens on all of it. I think there are people that understand that. And then there are people that call you up and want you imprisoned for 15 to 20 years, which, I'll be a character witness for you if that trial comes up.
Thank you.
And I hope you're able to be exonerated.
Thank you. All right. I wonder where Stud stands on this. Let's bring him in to make our predictions for Bears-Packers Sunday at Lambeau Field. Hey, Studs. How's it going there?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Doing well. All right. So you heard a lot of all of our discussions. You can chime in on anything you have to add, as well as give us your Bears-Packers prediction for Week 18.
I don't really have a lot to add to anything you guys have said so far. I mean, we got a lot of time to talk about a lot of that stuff. So I'll kind of let you guys speak on that for right now. But as for the game on Sunday, I think that this one has potential to. I like the way that what you put it, Dan. It has potential to be a real moment.
It is,
and whether or not it really is, it shouldn't determine what the future of Justin Fields or Matt Eberflus is. Like, it should be part of the whole picture, but this shouldn't be a deciding factor, even though it will be for some people, I'm sure. I might even be one of them. And but I think here's like, looking at the game itself, I think that as I've watched the Packers recently, there's some things with their offense and with Jordan Love specifically that I think can be exposed by this Bears defense. And so I'm kind of leaning on that in my prediction. And I also think that this Packers defense, which has played pretty well last week against some terrible quarterback play, has also been terrible for the most part over the last month. So and also, like, look, you guys aren't going to be shocked by this. And I'm pretty, sorry, I ran one a little bit. I said, like, last year, I'm going to keep picking the Bears in this game until they win one. So I'm not stopping now. And so I'm going to go with the Bears 28-20. I think that things are going to be a lot different than they were the first game of the season. And so I think we lost Dan here, David. So it's just me and you for a few minutes. There's reading back in. But anyway, there we go. Dan, I picked the Bears 28-20.
You next, David, or me?
I'll go next. Or you go next. Go ahead.
All right. So, you know me. I'm all into theater. And my theater has this being a football game that the Bears defense plays really well in. If they can do what they've done to Jared Goff in 2 previous meetings in the last 7 or 8 weeks, they've got a chance to win this game. But I think the ball is going to be in the hands of Justin Fields in the offense in the final 4 minutes, with a deficit to overcome and a chance to go down the football field and change it all. Final score, Packers 24, Bears 22.
I wish we would have ended with that. Oh, that's delicious. So you have Justin Fields with the ball in his hands, with the chance to do what he hasn't done, and a chance to change a lot of minds, and then the Bears falling short.
Let's talk for 30 seconds on the way that this Packers defense has historically flummoxed Justin. They play a heavy dose of zone coverage. Justin has not handled zone coverage from the minute he got into the league until the end of his 3rd season. They have eyes on him. They've got a front with Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary and potentially Preston Smith, who looks like he's going to be in line to play. That creates a lot of pressure up front and makes your quarterback make plays and throws into zone windows that Justin hasn't been good at. So I think it's not going to be enough to score 37 and be ahead by double digits for the entire second half. You're going to have to make plays, and down the stretch of games, we need to see it before we believe it.
To your point, the Packers aren't going to be as unwise as the Falcons were. You've got a quarterback in Justin Fields that his QBR is top 5 against man coverage and bottom 5 against zone coverage. Why would you ever play man on 3rd and long, 3rd down period against Justin Fields? I would sit back in the zone. I would confuse the heck out of him. I would make him make a decision, and I would watch him hold on to the ball a tick too long and then try to throw it into a window he can't hit. That's the way you defend Justin Fields, and what prevents a lot of people from believing in him. He's never proven that he can make those throws and make those reads quick enough to matter. So good. I think that's an interesting prediction. Okay. I like drama too. So I think that here we are on the doorstep of a very special Sunday. And Justin Fields on Sunday, if my prediction is true, this is the day he becomes a Bears legend. He becomes a Bears legend because he's the reason the Bears beat the Packers. He's the guy that can't stop on 3rd down. He's the guy that can't catch going for 80 yards rushing. He's the guy that can't stop with 3 touchdown passes. Justin Fields outplays Jordan Love and flummoxes the Packer defense. And Justin Fields single-handedly beats the Packers 23-19. Bears win in Justin Fields' final game as a Chicago Bear, because time will pass, emotions will subside, and he will be traded. And all we're going to remember about Justin Fields, not all we're going to remember, but the first lasting, most indelible image is him celebrating at Lambeau Field in his last game as a Bear when he rose to the occasion but he was traded anyway. And that will be the first highlight on his video tribute whenever he comes back to town as the starting quarterback of the Falcons Raiders, fill in the team later.
That is a double-sided prediction from David Haugh.
All right, so let's wrap things up with our 2-minute drill.
I think Studs' soul just left his body.
Sorry.
2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill.
Okay, Pro Bowl snubs this week. I didn't like DJ Moore being left out. He's a good guy. He talked about it. He tweeted about it. Montez Sweat, he belongs, leads 2 teams in sacks. Why not? Jalen Johnson, it's appropriate that he's going and Montez Sweat is going, because if Montez Sweat wasn't going, neither would Jalen Johnson. They belong together. They both earned it.
Jalen Johnson wants to add All-Pro to his list of accolades. There are coaches in the building that say there was a couple more picks that he would have had this year, and he would have been a no-doubt All-Pro. But he's on that track. He's climbing. He answered every single challenge this year, and I'm glad to see him get that honor. And Montez Sweat, cool thing about this dude is that he keeps just checking off boxes of things that he wants to do, and then putting them aside and saying, here's the next thing I want to do. And that's what you hear from this coaching staff that's fallen in love with this guy really quickly for obvious reasons, because Montez Sweat helped the defense get better, which helped the team win more, which has helped the vibe in this building over the last 2 months. And so he is well-deserving of that honor as well.
Darnell Mooney ruled out, Dan. Was that the latest injury news? Anything else of significance?
Yeah, a concussion for Darnell Mooney. This is the final game of his rookie contract, so we may not see Darnell Mooney in a Bears uniform ever again. That's one of those offseason stories that we'll revisit when some of these higher profile headline-grabbing stories dissipate. Patrick Scales missed the first 2 practices of this week with a foot issue. The Bears had to go out and get 38-year-old Matt Overton signed to the practice squad as an emergency net. But Scales was back in practice on Friday, will make his 120th consecutive appearance in a Bears uniform on Sunday at Lambeau Field.
He's nipping at Patrick Manley's heels. How about Tyson Bagent? Is he back from an illness? And I only ask that because he's worked out a veteran, well-traveled quarterback, Chris Trevler. Was Trevler, right?
Tyson Bagent back. He was on the practice field today and seems to be in good spirits from what we saw in the locker room today as well.
What a relief. Anything else in terms of injuries or depth chart moves before Sunday's game?
The Packers have 3 of their top receivers on the injury report, all questionable. Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, and Jaden Reed dealing with various injuries. Preston Smith also questionable. There are some notable names on that Packers injury report to keep an eye on. I was going to say Sunday morning, but it'll probably be mid-afternoon because of the 3:25 start.
And before we get out of here, let's end it with the way we started talking about Kevin Warren. You have been around him a long time, and I think that we can't just overlook some of the things that he does and has already done and since returning to the Chicago community. Him and Greta, as his wife Greta, showed up at Lurie Children's Hospital on Friday morning and held a press conference. They did not want to answer. He did not want to answer football questions, but the purpose for being there was $1 million donation to Lurie Children's Hospital, which is a significant philanthropic gesture. It's more than a gesture. It will change lives. And when you have somebody who cares that much about doing something like that, I think it bears mentioning and applauding, because bravo, Kevin Warren and his family. This was a great thing for him to do.
Well, in the story I wrote back in the summer, we detailed kind of his origin story. And a big part of his origin story is about the accident he was in when he was a child, when he was riding his bike, hit by a car, and spent a lot of time in traction in a body cast, and knew the feeling of being a child in a hospital bed and trying to sort through all that. And so philanthropy and outreach has always been part of his DNA, in his professional life. It is a incredibly generous gesture, as you mentioned, and something that I know he and his wife are very passionate about in terms of having that impact on this community. They love the city of Chicago, and this is a way to make an impact in that regard. And so I would not downplay something like this ever, because I think it is a truly sincere gesture.
So Sunday night at Lambeau Field, after the Bears and the Packers finish up the regular season, we'll have thoughts. We'll react if you can on deadline. If not, we'll react without you, but I'll be here. Okay, good. So we'll have a Take the North podcast Sunday night from Lambeau Field with reaction, and then we'll
probably every day next week.
Yeah, we'll be in postseason mode depending on what happens, and we'll wait for the puffs of smoke to emerge from Hallis Hall's chimney and to see which way they go with regard to the head coach, the offensive coordinator, which we didn't get to, but I've talked a lot about Luke Getsy, and the quarterback. And we'll get some clarity, hopefully, and know which direction we're going. Anything else, Dan, before we get out of here?
Fascinating times. And I've said this multiple times on social media. They are exciting and hopeful times for the Chicago Bears, entering a period that is filled with opportunity. The rest of the league has their eyes fixated on Chicago. We'll see which direction the Bears take it.
It'll be a great game on Sunday, and then the Bears have the offseason where I think essentially they're going to get a chance to choose between good or better. They're in an ideal spot for an NFL franchise. And even Wayne Larrivee, the voice of the Packers, was on the Mully and Haugh Show Friday morning. And he said the Bears are ready to turn the corner, this time for good. And that's just the sense you feel around the league. A lot of questions about the coach, a lot of questions about the quarterback, but there's no question, because of this defense and because of some of the moves Ryan Poles has made, this is a franchise which finally seems to have the arrow pointing up. So a lot to talk about. We appreciate everyone's time and patience in talking through it with us. And we'll be back Sunday night from Lambeau Field after the Bears and Packers game. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.